Thank you so much for coming today to our West Virginia Folklife Apprenticeship Showcase. The apprenticeship program supports West Virginia traditional artists or tradition bearers working with qualified apprentices on a year-long, in-depth apprenticeship in their cultural expression or traditional art form. So today, we have pulled together a small reunion of our apprenticeship pairs. Enrica McMillan of Elkins in Randolph County is working with her apprentice Barbara Weiner of Montrose in Tucker County to study fiber arts traditions, including fiber processing, dyeing with natural dyes sourced from locally harvested plants, and spinning fibers using a variety of tools for knitting and weaving. Enrica learned spinning, dyeing, and weaving at a young age from both of her grandmothers growing up in Helvetia, West Virginia. Enrica also researches large antique wheels traditionally used in West Virginia, and she has also created a database of over 6,000 spinning wheels. So over the years, Enrica and Barbara have both been active members of the Mountain Weavers Guild in Elkins. So our next pair, Sharon Briggs of Paw Paw in Hampshire County, is a farmer and mycologist, and so she also owns and operates Peasant's Parcel, Mushroom Farm, and Mycology Lab. She has been foraging and mapping mushroom locations in the Eastern Panhandle and Potomac Highlands for over 20 years. When Anthony Murray moved to the area, Sharon began to teach him how to identify and forage for mushrooms. He has been interested in mushroom foraging hunting ever since, and Anthony also helps on the farm and operates an apiary. Xavier Oglesby was born and raised in Beckley in Raleigh County. He credits his knowledge of recipes and love of cooking to 4 generations of family members, including his mother, father, and grandmothers. His niece, Brooklyn, also of Beckley, has been learning family recipes from her uncle and hopes to carry on the soul food tradition for her young sons to someday learn. The two of them have hosted card parties in Beckley this year, and they've been sharing their cooking traditions with their community.
I met Enrica in 1977 when I was pregnant with my first child, and we were both young and broke. And she was filled with skills growing up in a place, multi-generational family. Everyone knew how to do everything. And I grew up 10 miles from New York City and knew very little, but loved it all. And when I would go up to visit her, she had just moved out of a teepee into a small cabin that she and her husband had built. No electricity, no running water, on top of the biggest mountain close to our house. Every time I would go there, no phone, so no way to tell someone that you were coming. You just show up. There would be something else that she had made out of sticks, twigs, grass. Just mind-blowing, And in the middle of this, she's making lace and crocheting fabulous things and dyeing. It was just mind-blowing. And we've been friends since then in a lot of different capacities, actually. When I went back to school, Enrica took care of my kids. She operated a fabulous daycare center in Elkins where all of the toys were handmade and all the kids were learning how to crochet with their hands. And it was a really beautiful thing. And a lot of us who were going back to school, back to Landers going back to school, relied on her to take care of our kids, actually. And then she moved to Guam to run a big daycare center for the Navy, and I lost her. I got busy, she got busy, we're in different continents, and then years and years later, she moved back to West Virginia and was living south of Buchanan, and I heard that she was back, so another one of those unannounced visits. I drove over there, and she was in the process of dyeing wool from every plant within her site of her home. I'm talking about over, 150 plants or 200, in the neighborhood of 200 plants. With these skeins of wool hanging from the bushes, the trees, laying on top of the shed roof, a handmade Navajo loom on the front porch, a handmade loom in the living room of this house. A huge, I'm just describing this because it's just mind-blowing. You know, she was doing bobbin lace inside the house and crocheting and 4 different looms going with all these projects. And that's the way, that kind of awe is pretty much how everyone has reacted to everything that she makes. Margaret Bruning did it. I'm getting choked up about it. But Margaret did an apprenticeship a couple of years ago. And she said, you know, you should really apply for this apprenticeship because here's this master right there, you know. And I was really scared, actually, because I'm kind of an unruly student. A little bit unruly, you know, like I pick the dahlias, put them in the pot, throw the wool in there, and then I call her. I'm all excited, and she says, well, you know, flowers like that are really fugitive, and it probably won't work. You know, even though the dye looks really good. I'm like, are you kidding? It is the color of red wine, and the wool looks fabulous. And she's like, well, you can leave it overnight, and you could try putting some... Do you have any cream of tartar? You could put some cream of tartar in there, but don't count on it. I'm like, the next morning, I pull it out. It looks fabulous. And then I take it to the water, and it starts looking like the tablecloth. So my apprenticeship, I wrote a little book, which I didn't bring here, but it's called... dyeing, spinning, weaving, and doing over, because that's what it's been like. Just because something looks beautiful and it looks easy does not mean it's easy. It's really hard. And it was a big chunk, you know, this idea. I said, okay, I'm not going to learn knitting. I'm not going to learn crocheting. I don't have to learn how to spin cotton. I don't have to learn how to spin flax. I won't do silk. I'll just try wool. Well, guess what? It is hard. So we made a little agreement that just because the apprenticeship ends in October, it's not going to, because it really is a lifetime to learn something. And I have to say thank you to Bob and Mary Smakula, who actually gave me their niece's spinning wheel, which was really a fabulous gift. And Enrica is a real devotee of these West Virginia wheels, and she encouraged me to buy a great wheel and help me restore the great wheel. And John Gallagher actually made the spindle for the wheel, spent many days working on it, so thank you to John. And thank you to Tom Lynch, chairmaker, who made a drop spindle and a nose-to-pin, and people have been incredibly kind, giving me fiber to work with. It's been really touching. I have some pictures we could look at. The first slide is like what it's like to walk in her house. The second slide is a verification that she is half elf. Hand spun, hand dyed, hand knit. Fabulousness.
I have to make a new shawl every year for when I'm demoing spinning at Forest Festival. So that one is a maple leaf. This one was one from another year, a different time, but so that one was the cashmere and merino maple leaf shawl.
So it's just magic. This was an experiment. I love blue, and I wanted to do indigo dyeing, so we grew indigo and then dried the indigo in our greenhouse and fermented the indigo in a traditional Japanese fermentation vat. And I'm wearing a dress made of an old tablecloth that I dyed successfully with indigo with Lori Gunderson, and I'm not showing you the wool that dissolved in the indigo vat. And I'm not showing you the 3 skeins that I put in there that did not turn blue, and we're still working on the vat. These are flowers from the garden. This is a pot. Isn't that beautiful? That's the one that didn't work. Doesn't that look like it'd be the most fabulous dye? Those are the dahlia flowers. That is a successful one. That's coleus, red coleus, and that's the red that you see up there. This was coleus. And this is black-eyed Susan. This is cosmos. This one is castor bean. This one is Rudbeckia, black-eyed Susan. So lots of fun. The bright was yesterday. This was a success. Someone gave me a little jar of cochineal bugs, and you grind them up in your coffee grinder and make tea out of it. And this is the same dye. This was in longer. This is my backyard on a fiber arts day. All the wool drying. Different plants from wool dyed from different teas in the yard. That's marigold. This is Enrica coming over with Lori Gunderson, and we just were showing Lori what we had done last September. That's a successful one. That's outside last year, inspiring the placemats I made as a thank you to John Gallagher, and he'll get them at the end of the day today. That's Enrica trying to teach me to spin. This is a collection. She's got like 5 or 6 fabulous old wheels. This is what her house is like. Look at that. It's like a treasure trove. There's John in his shop. John cutting the dogwood to make the spindle. John teaching Enrica how to be a machinist. This is a tool she uses to blend wool. A drum carder to blend wool. That's my kitchen with the drum carder. That drum carder's from Andy Fitzgibbon's mother. Thank you, Peggy. Enrica on the floor with the Charka spinning wheel she made. She's made spinning wheels out of $5 worth of parts from Goodwill. She's made spinning wheels imitating Japanese wheels, Chinese wheels, Thai wheels. This is the wheel that Bob Smacula gave. My loom. Just tools. This is it's over here. It's an inkle loom that Enrica made me about 15 years ago. That's what happens when you work full time. You get this idea like, I really want to learn how to weave on an inkle loom, and then you get your friend to make you one, and then you work 60 hours a week and you don't use it till you take your apprenticeship. Our best field trip, going to Jimmy Costa's place.
That was great. I really enjoyed the trip to Jimmy Costa's. I've been planning to get down there for some time, but things kept happening and I didn't make it. And Barb wanted, just when I told her about him, she wanted to go too. So we finally went
This
down.
guy is amazing. He is running his own personal museum, complete with historic instruments, blacksmithing stuff, weaving, spinning, farming. Unbelievable. Like 50 years worth of collecting West Virginia stuff.
He lives in the southern part of the state near Hinton, so a ways down there. But I knew he had some spinning wheels and some fiber things, which he doesn't do or use. He just kind of collected them. And we got there and found there were some amazing finds. I was able to identify for him a few things that he had, and he didn't know how they were used but what they were for, and got to see some fantastic old tools.
He's the kind of guy who not only knows where he got it, he knows who he got it from, where it was made, where it has been since it was made, and he has an eye for things like this is this beautiful handmade wooden loom for weaving belts. It is just so beautiful. The gears on it are all hand-carved wooden things. He has them all labeled, like this was owned by this 97-year-old woman who lived up this hollow. Just fabulous. This is his house, which he moved, an old log house that he saved and built it. These are some examples of hand-carved shuttles for looms. from Jimmy.
Early West Virginia styles that have some unique qualities about them that I really like. They're wonderful to actually use, as opposed to the standardization of ones that are available commercially, which may look beautiful but not be weighted well, or those are used to throw the weft back and forth across the loom as you're weaving.
So that big one at the top is huge. It's like really big to be able to put tons of fiber on. We're just about to leave.
A lot of thread.
It's a 3-hour drive home.
Yeah.
We're just about to leave. And he says, wait a minute. Are you interested in linen, hand-done linen? And Enrica says, oh, yes. And they go into this whole conversation about how our grandparents used to raise flax and all the tools used for it. He's like, wait a minute, I'll be right back. Goes up to the attic of his house, opens up the window, throws a duffel bag
Packed full. I'm surprised
6
it
feet
didn't
long,
explode.
like this foot wide, this thing, out the window, onto the grass, and then opens it up, and it is filled with hand-spun, hand-woven linen sheets from 1840, all embroidered with the woman's, like, initials and 1840 in perfect shape. Someone spun that by hand. I mean, unbelievable. That's what his collection is like. It's like, are you interested in the handmade handkerchiefs, he says? I'm like, we gotta go. We gotta go. Anyway, it's been really fabulous. And I encourage the Folklife program to continue Enrica as a fiber arts master in the state and to search up apprentices for her because she's amazing.
Thank you.
I have to say, Enrica's experience and drive really puts us foragers to shame because we just wander around in the woods and find things and say, can we eat it or not, basically. I grew up in the eastern panhandle in the Potomac Highlands in Hampshire County, West Virginia, near Cape and Bridge. I grew up with the kind of the back to the land parents that were trying to get out of the city and found West Virginia as a refuge. The whole homestead house and the mother always going out on hikes with us and trying to see what we could eat and what we couldn't. And as a small child, I always was more fascinated with the mushrooms than the plants. Yeah, even though I still love both of them. And then I later moved to Elkins during high school. So I ended up going to Davis and Elkins. That's my alma mater. And at the time I was at Davis and Elkins, that's when I met my wife, and we started to become more interested in reading. We would go out on hikes together and find all these mushrooms. A lot I was familiar with, and I knew some of the things we could eat, but I started really diving into it with a little more depth, and started reading things like Paul Stamets and other mycologists, which just, as Jenny said, to clarify, mycology is just the world of studying fungus or fungi, which mushrooms are a part of. So a lot of times when we think of mycology, we just think of mushrooms, but there's a lot of other stuff within that category, and scientists are always reclassifying stuff under where it fits within that category. Fungi is a very evolving area of biology. But I, in college, started to dive more into that, and I worked at a wastewater treatment plant in Philippi. So if you lived in Philippi, West Virginia in the early 2000s, I helped make sure that your water was clean, and I did the best job I could. So, but I also at that job had access to a lot of equipment like autoclaves and things, and I was learning, you needed some of this equipment to grow mushrooms, and that's when I got into the actual side of how do you grow mushrooms. And since then, it really grew as a passion as I worked in my the area, the profession that I went to school for at Davis and Elkins, psychology, for about 15 years. I kept going back to workshops. I always spent every vacation I had living out of state, I would come back to West Virginia and go camping. So that it was kind of always where my heart was. So whenever I get the chance to do things like teach somebody about mushrooms, it's so exciting and fun for me. And it's an excuse to be a kid and get into the woods. This apprenticeship, on top of that, me and Anthony have known each other several years, and we've been hiking and enjoying the woods together, and he's helped on my farm for the last few years. So we've been basically doing what we did during this apprenticeship, but in a way that we weren't really thinking about it. And this apprenticeship really gave us a chance to have a framework and to reflect on not only the tradition of mushroom foraging, which has such a strong presence here in Appalachia. Everybody has their morel story. Everybody, has their favorites. I can't be in a dollar store and not talk to somebody about mushrooms. There is a very strong knowledge of mushrooms here and a very strong historical significance to mushrooms and foraging mushrooms. So we got to reflect a lot on that during our foraging. And we also got to, during this year, have more of a systematic or thoughtful process rather than just saying, hey, let's take today off. It's rainy and we can't do that work we need to do on the farm. Let's go down and hit this trail and go for a hike and see what we find. Whenever I would say that, subconsciously, there would be things going on like, I know when it last rained. I know what I found on this trail before. I know what's in season right now. I know the geography of this trail and how close it is to water and things of that nature. But none of those were surface level thoughts. And so I did want to say how much I appreciate that, almost like Enrica and Barbara, we had been doing this informally. And then there's a formalization that actually brings a lot of recognition up about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I guess just the one last thought on that is how it made me feel more connected to people that have been foraging in these hills for so long. I think there were a lot of times where I really felt more of a connection to the history of mushrooms and foraging than I do on my average, if I wasn't part of this program with Anthony. So during that time, we took a bunch of pictures and made a little slideshow.
So before I show the slideshow, I just wanted to kind of piggyback off what Sharon said. I grew up in the D.C., Northern Virginia area, and there's hiking and stuff there, but I never really had anyone that would be like, hey, let's go hiking and look for mushrooms and stuff. So moving here was like kind of this whole new world of discovering like mushrooms in the woods and not only just mushrooms, but just like finding foraging and really opening up this world of like there's the woods where you can just find an amazing amount of things like stuff for dying and stuff for eating and stuff for art and stuff. And it's just like it's like, I know I keep saying it's new world, but it really was. It was this almost like finding this new area that I'd never really known about. So finding that was really cool. And then just finding the different mushrooms has been really cool and learning about them. I mean, there's so much to learn. Sharon has taught me, and it's very much like every day I feel like I learned something new. Like just earlier today, she was saying something about chicken of the woods that I didn't know about. So I'm like, oh, wow, that's really cool. So I think it's really cool to connect that too. And especially the tradition, like Sharon was saying, it's really cool to be able to forage things that people generations ago have been foraging and using and relying on the land and stuff. And it's really empowering to go out and be like, I know this knowledge, I can find this thing, I can use it or eat it or whatever and talk to people about it. So it helps me really educate other people, kind of passing that tradition along, I feel like. So that's been really cool. And I really enjoyed this apprenticeship. I feel like it's been really helpful for me to gain some knowledge, gain some skills, and just meet really cool people. I feel like everyone in the program is really cool and has a lot of going on. So these are just, to go back to the slide, these are just some mushrooms we found over the year of mushroom foraging. So I'll go through each of these and I'll talk about it. So this is what's called witch's butter. This is a medicinal mushroom. It translates to trembling intestine, and you can kind of see why. It looks very jelly-like, and it's very bright yellow. Like, this is not a saturated picture. This is what it looks like. This is used for immune support, and this has a folk tradition in a lot of times it would grow on old wood. So like if people were growing it, they would have like a door frame, and if they saw this growing, it was called witch's butter because people thought you were cursed by a witch. So like this would grow, and people were like, oh my gosh, you got cursed by a witch. There's this bright yellow thing growing on your doorway. So it's kind of like this interesting thing back in the day. That's why it's called witch's butter. So that's just an interesting tidbit there. This is turkey tail. Turkey tails are cool. They're a medicinal mushroom as well. You can make tinctures and stuff out of it. You can also dry it and make a powder and tea. So this is something we found that was really cool. And this is a very beneficial mushroom. It has a ton of antioxidants and stuff to fight like free radicals and things. These are pretty easy to find. There's also things called fake turkey tails, which are a little bit different. And that's one of the things I learned too, was like there's a lot of mushrooms you'll find. There's mushrooms that look like it but are dangerous. So you kind of have to have a base knowledge of going in, and like going in, I didn't know much about it, but Sharon would talk me through every single step of being like, okay, this is a good mushroom, not good or bad mushroom, but this is like a mushroom we can use. This is a mushroom that we can't really use. This isn't edible. This is not edible. So like going through different mushrooms was really cool, and they're so different. Like just the last two pictures, like you can see structurally they're completely different from each other. This one doesn't have gills, the other one didn't have gills. A lot of times people kind of have an image of like one or two mushrooms in their head, but really there's a huge variety, which is really cool to see. This is a scarlet elf cup. So this has been used medicinally by indigenous native tribes like the Oneida, and this helps with wounds. They would dry it up and kind of use it as a paste to put on wounds to kind of cauterize it a little bit, or to stop the bleeding, I should say. These are really cool. These are also known as scarlet elf caps, because it looks very bright and it kind of looks like a little elf cup. This is a picture of a lion's mane. Lion's manes are really good medicinal and edible mushrooms. They've done a lot of studies of showing that some of the benefits of lion's mane are it fights off some of the neurotoxins that create plaque that causes Alzheimer's. So they've done a lot of studies with that, which is cool. People like to grow these and make a powder and like little supplements. A lot of people would take those every day for brain health. This is one we found. The video is just me cutting it off, and you can see it's kind of like the size. It's a little bit bigger than my fist. These grow outdoors, and they usually grow in small clumps like that.
A lot of times when people cultivate them, they'll actually purposefully grow them in smaller balls, and they'll sell them as pom-pom mushrooms. It's in the Hermicium family. So sometimes you'll see ones that are very, very similar to this. They're called a tooth comb mushroom because it looks like when they grow fully out, like they have kind of like, when you hear the name lion's mane, it kind of looks like hair that's been brushed down, but that's actually, they call them teeth, those little tendrils that fall out. So sometimes you'll see different varieties of the Hermicium, which will grow in more coral-like structures, but they're also edible and quite delicious.
These people say they taste like lobster. They use them as like a seafood substitute, so sometimes people use it like a bisque and stuff. So it's really good. It's a very meaty mushroom. This is what's called wood ear. These have been used traditionally in Chinese cooking. Studies have been shown that it helps lower cholesterol. These are really cool. They're kind of like a jelly fungi as well. You can find these. Usually they'll be like on sticks that you found on the ground, and they'll grow in kind of like clusters. These are good. You can eat them fresh, or you can dry them and eat them later. But this is just a little picture of them.
I like this one because you can kind of see why they call it a wood ear. Is that a lot of them do have like an ear type look, but then they often don't. So sometimes people, when they're foraging them, they're looking just for that ear. But whenever you see anything that's like that, that's a fleshy, flexible, brown jelly fungi, that's pretty much the only one that grows in this region. Mm-hmm.
So this is a red reishi. These are really exciting to find. This one's actually really big. This was like about maybe a football size. It was really big. We found these actually when Jenny was hiking with us when our site visit, which is really cool.
It wasn't the best season. We thought we were really going to look bad, and then we found this right at the end of the hike. Right. So you never know. Just keep looking if you can't find one.
Yeah, so these are cool. These have been used for hundreds of years in China as like a medicinal mushroom for immunity and digestion. These are, again, you dry them and powder them and use them as a tea usually. And there's also different kinds of reishi. These are, you can see kind of the coloration. It kind of like is very shiny. Near the back with the red, and it gets very dark red, and then it kind of tapers out into like a yellow and white, as you can see on the edge. This is another kind of jelly fungi, like which is butter. This is called white jelly fungus. It's very similar structure to the other jelly mushrooms. These are cool. These are used as an extract in Japan and China and East Asia as a moisturizer. So people will take these, they'll use it, and then they'll use it as an extract. You don't see a lot of other usage for it other than that. It's not really an edible mushroom, but it's cool that you can use it as an extract. It's just another example of how mushrooms are not only just edible, but they're also medicinal. They're used for art, they're used for cosmetics, and just different things, which is cool. This is what's called a bruising palette. These are really cool. You can see the blue things; those are actually thumbprints that we pushed on them. And these, they're called bruising bullets because they bruise really easily, and it's an identifier to say what kind of bullets they are, which is just a kind of mushroom. So you can see this one has a very thick stem, and it's very thick on the top. You can't really see it, but it's very spongy as well. These are what's called polypores. So like a lot of mushrooms, you might think of have gills. These have what's called polypores. So it's very tiny little pores that are opened up, and it's kind of like this very spongy material that their spores come out of, which is really cool. These are what's called ghost pipes. These are used traditionally to help treat epilepsy and convulsions. There's a chemical in that helps stabilize people from having certain reactions when they have epileptic seizures. These are really cool. They look really cool, and they have a cool name. These we found hiking, I think at the same time we found the reishi. I don't remember, but these are also cool because they look a lot different than most mushrooms. These are kind of like the name, the ghost pipe, and these are really cool to find. And this is one of my favorites too because it's so bright and so pretty, and it's just very artistic looking, and it's kind of one of those really cool mushrooms.
Just a little note on those last couple of slides. Boletes and polypores are technically kind of a different variety of mushrooms, but they are very similar structurally. And then ghost pipes, there's a little bit of controversy around. They aren't technically a mushroom. They aren't technically a plant. And when I said in my introduction how there's a lot of moving pieces to how scientists classify things in the fungi community, ghost pipes are one of those that's kind of fun where you can get into a good argument with a mycologist about what they actually are.
Yeah. So this is chicken of the woods. This is what a lot of people are familiar with. This is like my first beginning foraging mushroom. This is what a lot of people say is like a good beginning foraging mushroom. It's very bright orange. It's very colorful. You can spot it in the wild. Nothing really looks like it. There's a mushroom called the jack-o'-lantern that is also orange, but it has gills. So like if you're in the woods and you see an orange mushroom and it has gills, a way to remember is gills make you ill. So that's one way to do it. So these are really cool. These are chicken of the woods. There's actually two types of chicken of the woods. This one's the cincinnatus. You can see the cincinnatus has the white edges on it. And these are a very choice edible mushroom. They have a lot of high protein. They're very good. They taste like chicken, which is where the name comes from. And these grow in the same spots generally. So if you find one on a stump or a tree, you can come back the next year and it either will be on the same spot or within like a 20-foot radius or something. So those are cool to find. And those right now are out. So I think from June until about October, these are out in season. So if you find one in the woods, you can pick it and do a little research before you do anything, before you eat any mushroom. It's just a common sense thing. So this is what's called a velvet top. So these are cool. These have they've like the name says, they have a very velvety kind of feel to them. And these are cool. They've been used as a natural dye. There's different kinds of velvet tops that are different colors, but these have been traditionally used as dyes, and they decompose a lot. Kind of like, I don't know if some of you saw the shaggy mane that dissolves into ink. This is kind of like one of those. It dissolves into like a dye that's been used for hundreds of years by different cultures around the world. This is just a little red reishi. You can see how small they can get, or how small they start out, and it's like just the size of our finger. This is just one we found in the woods that we thought was a kind of cool picture. It's the same as the other red reishi. It's just a smaller version. These are amanitas. So the one on the left, if you see at the bottom of the base, that's what's called a veil. And
The bottom of the vase is called a vulva,
sorry,
which is similar to, might know why they call it that. And one thing is, when we think of mushrooms, we think of the mushroom as being the whole thing, but in reality, most of what is the fungus is under the ground or in the tree, and its mycelial network, which is kind kind of like its root network. And when they pop out a mushroom that we see, they're just propping that out to reproduce. It's just a reproductive mechanism. So we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. But yeah, that's actually called the vulva, and the veil is along where the cap is. It's along the top of the cap. So even in shiitakes have a veil. They're one of the most common ones that you might buy at a grocery store. So if you buy a shiitake and it's a little bit smaller and it still has a little white thing around the bottom of it, it still has its veil. It hasn't released its spores yet. If you find one of those at the grocery store or the farmer's market, you take it home and you put it on a piece of paper, you can actually see it will release its spores, and you can make your own spore print.
And the one on the right, they're both amanitas. The one on the right is more the one with the spots. That's kind of more how a lot of more common amanitas, they'll have the spots. Like a very common amanita is the red and white mushrooms from like Super Mario. That's an amanita. And those have been culturally used for hundreds of years. In Russia, they still eat them. The red Amanita muscaria is the fly agaric, which is the red and white mushroom. They'll eat that a lot in Russian stuff in different parts of the world like that.
Where the original red and white for Santa came from, we believe, is from people eating these mushrooms that gave them good dreams. All the little red and white mushrooms we see iconized around.
Yeah. Also, that's without getting into too much detail. They would use deer would eat them, and then the urine would contain some concentration of it. So, like ancient Vikings would also drink it, and that's what would cause them to go berserk, their berserker mode. So it's kind of this weird like thing that's very cultural in our society, but we don't really think about the background of it, which is kind of funny.
There is. And culturally in America, we will tell you they are poisonous and you should never eat them. If you go to Russia, you will see people eating them. Mm-hmm. So there is the death angel or death cap is one of the most common, that left one on the white one on the left there. Because we don't culturally eat them, they are poisonous to us. If you are in a culture where you've eaten them for generations, then they might be something that you consume just fine. Mm-hmm. And most of the people that are consuming them in indigenous areas were consuming them through reindeer urine or through putting small amounts into soups and things for that euphoric effect. They weren't necessarily eating them for culinary, just for nutrition.
So this one's a northern tooth. This one's non-edible, and it kind of grows because it's wavy pattern. This is an artist conch. On our table, we actually have a couple of those that we painted, which is really cool. The white flat part we covered with a primer, and then we covered over that. This is just assorted mushrooms we found. We did different spore prints. On the table, there's a couple examples. This is another chicken of the woods. This one's sulphurous, and you can see the yellow. And this one's a very young one, so this one looks very fresh. Kind of looks like little chugga nuggets. This is a ring of bracket fungi. This is just kind of nondescript bracket fungi that grow. We just thought it was like a cool pattern, and this is what they usually grow in they'll grow in clusters and stuff. This is a veiled polypore. This is just another medicinal mushroom we found. This is another lion's mane. You can see the picture. I'm pointing to one because usually they'll grow up where you can't get them. This is a horsehoof tinder. These are cool. These have been used for tinder. There's an old caveman that they found thousands of years that was frozen for thousands of years or preserved for thousands of years, and he had one of the tinder hoof mushrooms on him so it's been used for thousands of years as like a tinder and stuff. These are jack-o'-lanterns. This is the one that's poisonous. That's the orange, so you can see kind of the orange color, but it's different than a chicken of the woods. This is a shaggy mane. Which is what on the table this was dissolved into an ink that we use for painting and dyeing, and it's been used in indigenous cultures for hundreds of years. And then this is an oyster mushroom on the left, which is also an edible mushroom that's really good protein, and then a sweet knot on the right, which isn't edible, but people in early colonists would use it. You cut it open and it smells sweet, so they would put it like an air freshener in their house.
And if anyone is going to be in the Eastern Panhandle, we have a gallery exhibit with those pieces and a dozen more pieces that's going to be at the River House in Cape and Bridge, West Virginia, all throughout October and November. So please stop in the cafe, have a coffee. It's a really great little arts location there, and see our exhibit.
Hi, I'm Xavier, and this is my niece Brooklyn.
Hi.
And we're doing soul food cooking. I was talking to Jenny about about learning cooking from my great grandmothers and my grandmothers and so forth. Incidentally, my grandmother just passed away, my maternal grandmother, last Friday. And so I did her rice pudding recipe for this occasion. And so I'm really, really enjoying this this whole process. We just got back from vacation, and I had the opportunity to cook for the family once again. Usually it's probably about 20 or 30 of us that go down. And I'm grateful to have my niece a part of this program with me. And my brother back there in the back, I called him Old Yeller. And I gave him the assignment of cooking the chicken. But actually, when you taste the greens today, you're going to find he actually cooked those greens. And I certainly hope that you enjoy them. Does anybody have any questions? I don't have a lot to say. And, of course, there's my...
I'm not a very good spokesperson.
Soul food is about taking the things that you have. I'm sure that most of you, if you are from West Virginia in particular, you're from up in the woods and things like that. You know how you take things that you have. Oftentimes you don't have a lot, but what you do have, you take it and you make the best of it. And that's pretty much where soul food comes from. Soul food cooking is where I would watch my mother. She had 5 children. 4 of us were boys and 1 girl. And so she had to feed a lot of people. And my mom would take, she had a little bit of hamburger. She would take eggs and some other stuff and put it in there to stretch it and, this kind of thing. But when she finished, it was really, really good. And so soul food is about just taking the things that you have, fresh, the greens and things that you grow in your garden. This year in particular, I was blessed to have red potatoes that I generally grow hay bale gardens. And I was blessed to have the red potatoes to voluntarily come back. And so I started with russets, and my mustard greens came back voluntarily. So it's you go and you get the things that you have. When they're showing about the mushrooms and things like that. Old Yeller back there, he brings us mushrooms all the time, and we really, really enjoy those. My great-grandmother, Virginia, she used to go out and get dandelion greens and take polk and what they called plantain, and she would forage through the woods and put that stuff together and put a piece of pork, smoked pork in there and cook it, and it was really, really good. And so that's where soul food comes from. That's soul food cooking. Now, you're going to have some chitlins back there. I took my time and cooked those. And they're going to be in small samples. I want you to at least try it. And people talk when you think about soul food cooking. And Jenny and I were talking about it, and I said, well, if we're going to do soul food, it's probably we need to put some chitlins on the table. So I really hope that you enjoy it. Chitlins are... Actually, most people don't realize that they eat chitlins. They don't realize they're eating them. When you eat Rotsworth and things like that, the casing is actually intestine. And that's what chitlins are. You eat it in, like I say, in sausage and links and things like that. The casing that's around that, that's what that is. So, we just cook it a different way in our kitchens, and we call it soul food cooking, and we actually stew ours. I think that the Chinese actually make a soup with it. Maybe Puerto Ricans, they do as well. But there's different ways that it's prepared around the world. But in our kitchens, it's generally stewed. But that's what a chitlin is. It's a very, very long process. You have to clean them, and you have to clean them in such a way. I developed a thing for myself because I was taught to clean them so well. You have to do them clean them 5, 6 times, maybe 7. And I started using shears in the kitchen to clean around the edges, because often when you're cleaning chitlins, you have pieces of corn and the little husks and things like that. And so you have to get those husks from there. And so in order to get that from around the edges, I'm in there with shears and actually trimming them. And it takes a long, long time. As far as the smell, we use vinegar in there. I did not cook these with vinegar. I used a bay leaf. I use crushed red peppers and bell peppers and things like that, and it neutralizes the fragrance from that. And of course, Nisi Poo, I call her Nisi Poo. She says, "Oh, if I have to smell that, I'm going to run. I probably will throw up."
Yeah, I was pregnant during this whole ordeal. Thank God I'm not pregnant now.
But I wouldn't dare do a soul food dinner without putting at least some chitlins on the table, so you can get an idea of what it is. A part of our cuisine we've been enjoying them for, I guess, long before I was born. Well, you don't generally see nowadays, most people's tables, you won't see the way that we prepare collard greens and things of that nature. Everybody is kind of more what they call health conscious, so they won't use the smoked pork like we do. I'm going to generally use a jowl and a ham hock in mine. I use both. And of course, you cook the meat first, and you cook it until it starts to maybe fall apart, and with the onion in and the seasoning in there, and then you add your greens in there once you get it the way that you want it. Today, people are using smoked turkey to cook everything with, because everybody is so conscious about their health. But at the end of the day, when you cook it the way that Old Yeller cooked those back there, you're going to get the real flavor of it. There's nothing like having smoked meat, smoked pork in your greens. To me, it's not the same.
It's not. I cooked greens with turnip greens with a turkey leg, and it did not taste like his.
Also, one more thing. Also, when you talk about something you don't see on the table anymore, some of your older people here, we used to cook what they call creasy greens. You can't even find. You could find them in cans, and you can't even find a creasy green in the farmers markets or anything hardly anymore. And but that's one of my favorite greens on the planet. A creasy green, I think they call them watercress. I think that's what the new name for it is, but they're called creasy greens, and they're usually at the creek side and by water, and they're sandy. They're really sandy, and you have to clean them really, really well, or you're going to have a mouthful of sand when you're finished.
I actually have really loved it. Growing up, my dad cooked every day, and I just sat there like a princess and didn't go in the kitchen and learn very much like I should have. And then now where I have my own family, and they need to eat, and Yeah.
Two boys of all things.
Right. Yeah. Trust me. I like to eat too, but yeah, I started making meals. They weren't tasting very good, and I can try to reach out to my family, like, please save me. And they know I struggle. They've had my food. So, yeah, my uncle.
She told us today that she's fried chicken with using what do you call it, egg wash?
Egg wash.
I said, child, please. We
He
don't
said
fry chicken
tenders, but not drumsticks. So
oh
they
gosh.
came out okay last time, but I was missing something. But I've learned a lot. Even today, I'm still learning stuff. And
Bless her heart.
I know I can call.
Whoa. Well, I think it's safe to say, because Grandma's gone now, and she told me
Can't
when
share
she
the
would-
recipes.
she told me on pain of death she would actually kill me if I told her recipes. She told me one day we had a dinner at my uncle's church, and my grandmother had prepared, my mother's mother, she prepared string beans and something, and I don't remember what the other thing was, but I carried it there before she got there. And there was a lady that had, from my uncle's church, that had, he was a pastor. She had been assigned to fix string beans as well. These ladies can be very competitive. And so when, unbeknownst to me, this lady had taken my grandmother's string beans and poured them into hers to make hers taste better. When Grandma got there, we got in the auditorium and started to eat, and they were talking about the string beans, and the lady said, yeah, I put mine in with Miss Bunny's, and oh, they were so good. When she got me home, she said, don't you ever let someone put their stuff in my food. And so they are very competitive. I fixed her rice pudding. The potato salad is actually my mother's potato salad. I'm trying to think. The chicken is. They taught me how to take the flour. I was telling one of the ladies who is here. You mix your flour and your seasonings together, and there's a sifter. I have a sifter back there that belonged to my grandmother. And you put the flour in with the seasoning, and you sift it until it's all of the seasonings and stuff are really, really mixed in there really well. And then you coat your chicken with it and whatever. We don't put a egg wash on there. And so that's how we do that.
Not crispy at all.
It's raw when we put it in the oil. And sometimes now I noticed on the TV they were saying that you don't wash your chicken and, that kind of thing. You're not going to enter, black folks' homes and see them cook chicken and they're not washing their chicken. You'll get talked about badly, if someone sees you do that. Oh, of course, I grew up on the coal camp. As I said, we're generations of people. We grew up on the coal camp. My grandmother, her house was at one time back in the 19th century. Her house was actually one of the only boarding houses on the coal camp. And so years later, my grandma and granddad Grandma Oglesby and them, they bought that house and moved into the house. It's a 16-room house. So that anything that they had when they did quilting, that kind of goes along with what you guys are talking about. When they did quilting, all the ladies from the coal camp would come to Grandma's house because she had such a very large great room, and they would set up and whatever like that. Well, in the end, they would have card parties on the coal camp. As you know, back then, there were not a lot of places that we could go. And so you had to make your own fun. And they would have these card parties where they played whist and so forth. So today I host card parties because of this particular program. I have, the pictures are here. I have have card parties and I cook the soul food and whatever, and I usually have that there. And we play what we call bid whist, and we play spades and dominoes and chess and things of that nature. Have some really, really good music and so forth. And we have a wonderful, wonderful time. The last card party that we had was on Father's Day, and it was great. We had brisket and so forth. Here is where I'm teaching her to do candied sweet potatoes. And she's scared to put sugar in there. And I'm trying to get her to, you have to really put it in there. Okay. And I'm trying to see what this is I'm doing. I'm not really sure. Yeah, it's definitely me. I don't know, but I tell you, we had such a wonderful time. That's Old Yeller there that you see back here. He's playing whist, and that's Lady D. She was doing music that night and whatever. The card party has grown quite a bit. Every time we have one, it's we get more people, and I'm really doing those parties, and so to give people in the community something to do. Today, I guess the way we have fun is totally different than the way a lot of these younger people, millennials, have fun. And I really want to give people of our age, a certain age, something to do. And when wintertime comes in, I'm hopefully our card parties will be the thing to do when people get cabin fever and want someplace to go.
I just want to point something out, the thing that excited me about having all three of your pairs together for this showcase in particular, you think what's the commonality across all three of these? And in my mind, I was like, just getting to know you over the course of this program year, the three of you pairs, you have these skill sets in being resourceful and finding the things you need, growing the food you need for your recipes, sourcing from Goodwill sweaters of the materials that you want to use, and the natural dyeing, across the things that you can find in nature. So I just want to point that out, that's something that I think really, I think so highly of all three of these pairs for those reasons. And that's a really incredible skill set to have. Okay, thank you all so much. Thank you all for being here.